Hi, I'm Mark Unger, producer of Roundtable. Because we find this presentation so special, we really would like for you to see this. Please watch.
Good evening, and welcome to Single Shot at Manhattan Neighborhood Network at Roundtable. I'm Alex E.G., and this is our guest, Sammy Boykin. Hi, Sammy.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us today. Photographers always have something that defines why they photograph and what they photograph, and in some rare cases, there is a photo artist who devoting his work to one specific geographical location, and tonight our guest is one of those artists who devoted their heart, their passion, and their skill to one specific place, and namely New York City. As I understand, Sammy, you in a way even decided to move to New York eventually, specifically to pursue this passion, right?
Absolutely. I lived in Atlanta for 32 years. I started coming up to New York in about 2005, and the first time I came out of Penn Station on a train from Jersey and walked up onto 8th Avenue, I was immediately struck by the energy and the power, and I just fell in love. I'm madly in love within a couple of blocks walking down the street. And so I really didn't think I would ever come back up here again. I thought it was a one-time thing. So I did come back up, and a friend of mine suggested that I buy some disposable cameras just to help me remember the things that I've seen. So I did, and I would say out of the 3 disposable cameras I bought, there were like maybe 10 good photographs. And I thought, well, maybe this is something I could start doing. So I went and bought a very small point and shoot just to make sure, something I wanted to do. And I did come back up to New York again, and I used that camera for a couple of trips, and then I started coming up here twice a year for a week at a time, and for 7 days I would just walk around Manhattan and Brooklyn and take photographs, hundreds of photographs. And most of them were pretty lousy. And so I started upgrading the cameras, and as I upgraded the cameras, I would go back to Atlanta, and I didn't really particularly care to photograph Atlanta, but I did it more for just practice, to get my composition down and to work on my editing and just stay busy with that. Then eventually I moved up here 3 years ago, and now I've got, I'm backed up on my editing, which is great because every morning I get up at 4 in the morning and I edit photographs for a couple hours before I go to work. And then I do some at night as well. And it's just a passion that I wondered if I would ever get rid of, and it's been 10 years and I haven't.
Oh, it's sizable time. I know a lot of relationships that lasted less.
Yeah, I know.
So the love from a first sight, and as a New Yorker, I can't believe I'm asking this question, but I think I must. Why specifically New York? I mean, Atlanta is a big city with a lot of panache, a lot of passion and beauty in it as well, and I'm pretty sure you've seen a lot of other places as well.
Well, I mean, New York is New York. I'm sure there's no place like it on earth.
Positively.
The energy, the culture, the architecture. Certainly there are older places in Europe. I've seen places in Portugal that are, 4,000 years old. But for some reason, these stone houses in the West Village that were built in the mid-1800s, I'm just drawn to them. I'm drawn to like when you walk down Madison Avenue and you've got a mirrored building, and then across the street you've got a building that was built in the early 1900s, and the reflection of that building is in the mirrored building, and it's distorted. I mean, that just fascinates me.
I think I remember the photo you actually mentioned right now.
I do lots of those.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated with fire escapes and shadow play on the fire escapes, where it gets almost geometrical depending on the shape of the fire escape. And I've talked to many New Yorkers that say they've never noticed the reflections. They've lived there their whole life. They've never noticed the reflections. They've never noticed the fire escapes. It's just utility, but I see the details of the city, and it just thrills me when I see it. It's kind of indescribable. I don't know why it thrills me, but it does. And then I have to photograph it, and then I have to make a better photograph out of that through editing process. So I don't change it that much. And I've never dabbled in film. To me, that's just impractical from my standpoint. I want to get a volume of photographs that you can't get with film.
Absolutely.
And plus, you have immediate knowledge of what you've gotten with your digital camera. You look and see, was that a good shot? Was it a bad shot?
It's positively helpful.
Nothing against film photography.
Absolutely.
It's just not practical for me.
But as I understand, after those disposable cameras, you still was using film for a while. You didn't
Never used film after that. I went to I bought a Nikon 6-megapixel PowerShot.
It was immediately digital.
Immediately.
Well, it's actually very similar to my personal experience as well. I had not disposable, but those point-and-shoot camera. I believe it actually was still Canon, even though it was a point-and-shoot.
Yeah.
And right after that, I switched to digital. Yeah, I totally understand everything you're saying about conveniences associated with it. And again, for me, just as well as for you, the possibilities of post-production of editing the photo are very important. Everything we're doing after the shot is already acquired, could have been done with film shot, with a lot of mastership, a lot of skills, and a lot of time implemented. But flexibility, ability to create versatility is of course important. And the vivid results that you display to your viewers are definite testament to that.
Well, it's like what you do. I've never seen anybody use the techniques that you use, the rounding thing that you've been doing for the last couple of years. I think it's been a couple of years you've been doing that.
Oh yeah.
And it's fantastic. Nobody else does that. That's your thing that you discovered, and now if anybody else does it, they're taking your thing.
Thank you. Actually, I don't think I ever discovered anything, but I am working on implementing some techniques and combining them. And as I understand, in a way, you're doing the same thing with your works as well. You're basically combining several techniques that was around for quite a while and creating your unique results.
Right, and I'm not really sure how that happened. It just naturally evolved into what I do now. And the techniques you're speaking of are like the straight lines and symmetry. I'm very, very particular about symmetry, unless it can't be. Sometimes asymmetrical is more beautiful, depending on the shot.
Of course.
Yeah, so, but my favorite thing is nice straight vertical and horizontal lines and symmetry. That's my favorite shots.
Oh, as I noticed from your works, you're paying special attention to architectural photography, especially the unique elements of design. Those we see every day, but normally don't pay attention, either because they're too far for us to see, or just because people are too much in a hurry to pick up their cup of coffee or to make to that train they're about to miss.
Right, while they're looking at their phones.
Of course, that's the most essential one. Yeah, so why architecture? Is it something conceptual or just aesthetical choice?
It's actually both. The thing that really gets me about the architecture in New York, and there are other I don't think there are other cities really in the country that have that, but certainly we've borrowed a lot of architectural techniques from Europe.
Of course.
But especially the older buildings from the early 20th century, they spared no detail, And if you really, really look at I don't really know my architectural terms, it's just I know what I find beautiful. But they've got the sculptures implemented into the facade, lots of great stonework, lots of symmetry. And like the houses in the West Village and in Yorkville, a lot of them have on either side of the door, they've got the faces carved into stone. I'm fascinated with that. The East Village has the same thing. I spend a lot of time photographing the East Village. Yorkville's one of my favorite places, of course, the Upper West Side. I kind of stay out of Midtown, just because you're in everybody's way. And if I find it very distracting with all the people. So I like to go to quiet neighborhoods where you can just concentrate on what you're doing.
Did you try Midtown at 4 o'clock in the morning? Because in my experience, it's really the best time to photograph it, especially in the summer when you already have a little bit of light.
Yeah, I'd have to get up at 2 to make it down there.
Well,
I understand what you're saying. I mean, I met a guest you've had, Chris Lord. I met him at the Brooklyn Bridge Park at 5 in the morning to shoot the sunrise on a cloudy day.
on a cloudy day. No.
But I was there.
I wonder how I missed those shots. Interesting. So, getting back to architecture, we'll be back after this brief pause. Alrighty, we're back, and as I said before, back to architecture. As I said, it wasn't just aesthetical choice, but also a conceptual choice. So conceptually, architecture of New York means...
It was, I'm not really sure what you mean by that.
Basically, what I'm trying to say that I understand putting concept in a photo is trying to say something specific with the artwork, not just showing something beautiful. Do you have something like this when you photograph in architecture? Is the underlying an idea you're trying to display with the image?
Yeah, it's actually very seldom I do that. Mostly, let's say I shoot a fire escape, and the shadows are long from the sun going down, so it kind of gives a geometry to it. I want to show that it's almost like a 3D. Well, it's already 3D. It's fire escape, but the shadows add a dimension to it where it almost looks like it's extending out. I just try to put a wow factor in every photo, every single photo I take. I want there to be something special in it. I want there to be, like I said, I want there to be symmetry or asymmetry. It's really hard to describe. It's hard to put into words, as you can see.
Well, so
It's just I see what I like, and then I take a shot of it. So,
well, as I understand, it's creating a visual for you with this wow effect, as you said.
Yeah.
And as photographers, we're all looking for it. And talking about wow effect and generally recognition, I know that you're running one of the largest groups of photographers who devoting their art or just contributing to photography in New York. That's probably the reason for your members of your group to participate in it.
Right.
In your experience, what drives people to join a social media group displaying their photos, and for some of them, as I understand, posting in groups quite regularly?
Well, one thing that this group is different from the other groups, we don't do contests, we don't do competition, we don't discriminate on the level of experience or the quality of the photos. They just have to be photos of the 5 boroughs. Simple as that. And it's over 15,000 people now, and they're from all over the world. So, you know, we get comments from people from Germany that love New York, people from China that love New York that have been here. And so they've come here and they've had a positive experience with the city, which is very easy to do these days. I find it a very safe city. So you don't have to look over your shoulder when you're out doing your work. You just focus on your work and you don't have to worry about anything bad.
Had to see it in the early 90s.
Oh, I've heard stories, and I'm glad I missed it. But no, there are a lot of people that have had from overseas that have had very positive experiences here, and people from Idaho, you know, people from California. I've got friends in California, and I've actually met people, you know, from other countries that have been here. And one girl, for instance, recognized me on the street from Argentina from my photo, from my profile photo on Facebook, that was kind of a mind blower there. It's something to be proud of. We started out with like maybe 10 people, and it's grown quite exponentially.
Well, even though you don't have contests, the name of the group is a dare contest on itself. Show me your NYC. That sounds like a dare.
Right. And basically it's just saying, show me what you see in the city. Yeah. Show me your interpretation of what you see in the city. And, you know, we don't require you to say what the photo is of. Just show me your NYC. Show me what you see when you look through the camera lens. And people get really excited about that. Like I say, New York City is a very exciting city, and there's so much to see. I mean, you can walk 20 blocks, and there's so much visual stimulation, as far as I'm concerned, that it feels like you walked 100 yards.
Of every sort, I may add.
Yeah, you're where you need to be before you know it, because it's just it's hard to describe how wonderful this city is to me. I'm still madly in love with it after all this time, and even moving up here. It's a lot tougher than living down south.
Oh, positively.
But I think overall it's worth it, without a doubt.
For me as well.
Yeah. The benefits very much outweigh the the difficult parts.
Yeah. So it's actually a very interesting example. Show me your NYC. Since you don't have contests, you don't have prizes, you don't discriminate in any way, it's basically pure situation to study the reasons that driven people to actually participate in this kind of online interaction. Well, in your experience, what is their motive?
Their motive is to, I would say that probably half of the people, if not more than half of the people that actually go to the site don't actually contribute. They just like looking at the photographs, you know, and there are a lot of local people, like we were talking about earlier, that don't notice these things. They get a big kick out of seeing photographs of these things they haven't noticed, and now they notice them.
So there is even an educational component to this.
Exactly, and that thrills me for that to happen. You know, to show something to someone that's been under their, you know, it's like they'll stop and smell the roses, saying, you know, these people, they get in their tracks back and forth to their work or, you know, their daily routines, and they don't just stop and take a stroll. You know, everybody's just got their head down and they're driving, and the city's too beautiful not to notice. That's the way I see it.
There is this saying that don't see the forest behind the trees, and that's probably what happens with New Yorkers who, whether was born here or lived here for a long while, we just have it too close to our nose to notice.
Well, I mean, even living in Atlanta, I had friends that never noticed how beautiful Atlanta was. You know, I mean, some people just don't notice things. They've got tunnel vision in their daily, you know, journeys or whatever you want to call it, and they don't stop and look around. And ever since I've been a small child, I've always looked around. I've always noticed patterns. I've always seen things that other people may find trivial. Mm-hmm. But if you really look at it and frame it properly, it's not trivial. It's beautiful.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's a special pride of old-time New Yorkers that they never been on Empire State Building and never visited Statue of Liberty. And I'm a proud member of the second group, actually.
Yeah, well, you know, there are parts of New York that I don't care for. Rockefeller Plaza during Christmas is no place to be. Times Square, anytime, is it was a nice place to see a couple of times, but you know, it's just.
It has a very special atmosphere, and I totally understand what you mean.
Yeah, yeah, and a lot of New Yorkers, just from what they tell me, there are certain parts of the city they despise.
Just too intense.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
but you know, the side streets, that's where you find. I think that's where you find most of the beauty, like the streets in between.
We'll be back after this brief pause. We're back, and in the last section of our show, the customer asking our guest for advice to his fellow photographers. And since we was talking so much about architecture and photographing architecture, I noticed that you have extremely skillful and extremely bold-looking images of fire escapes, which, as I understand, is a separate small passion of yours.
Yeah.
So I have a very simple question. How are we making them to look that good?
Well, it's kind of simple, although it took a while to perfect it, or if you could call it that. But it's something I call squaring up, where you get across the street from the subject, and you want a nice straight vertical line, and you want a nice straight horizontal line, and then you want the center to be even exactly in the middle. You want an exact center, especially with something like a fire escape. Not so much with the reflections, but and then you want your top to be nice and straight, and you want the bottom to be nice and straight, and then you take the shot. And I think because the reason I do that is because the architecture is implemented in a certain way where it's all in straight lines. So photographing it from the side, or photographing it looking up, or photographing it from either side, whatever. To me, it's a disservice to the architecture itself, and you want to show the lines that somebody spent a lot of time writing down on paper and then putting those bricks one at a time up there. It's kind of it's an homage to the skill that the buildings were built with. A lot of the older buildings in East Midtown that they haven't torn down yet, thank God. I like to shoot those the same way. I like to get out in front of them and have everything nice and blocked off in the viewer. And sometimes there might be a slight tilt, but that's why God created editing, right?
Absolutely. So basically, you're saying that when it comes to rhythmical structures, the one that have repetitive objects, symmetry is a key to making them to look complete.
Yes, I think it makes the photograph more powerful. If you shoot it head on. What else can I say?
I have so much to say, but we run out of time. Thank you very much, Sammy.
Oh, it was my pleasure.
It's really a pleasure to have you here
Thank
today.
you very much,
Thank
Alex.
you.
All right, take care.
I hope you found that worth watching as much as I did. I'm Mark Unger for Roundtable. Thanks for watching.